Hello everyone, I hope you've had a great day so far and that you're doing well. For this video we'll be starting a new Transformers unboxing and review quote-unquote series with the recently released Transformers War for Cybertron Studio series, and I thought let's start from number one. So here we have Studio Series Deluxe Class Bumblebee, and here's the first of the Gamer Edition. So I did a bit of a hint on YouTube a few days ago that this will probably be starting up. So on me I've got Bumblebee, Barricade and Optimus Prime. And I do have Megatron and Cliffjumper on pre-order. So they'll definitely come in the near future. But here we are, just starting this off. Probably do maybe a once a week video. In conjunction with the Friday, assuming scheduling goes back to what it should be, just to continue some stuff that I was doing from a series perspective with Rise of the Beasts. Anyway, enough of that aside, just in case anyone was wondering what's going to happen in the next few weeks. So here we have the front of the box for Deluxe Class Bumblebee. So a slightly different take on the Studio Series design, ever so slightly, but it's still very cool. It's nice that they're doing a slight variant without necessarily detaching it from the Studio Series. So we have a nice image of Bumblebee per War for Cybertron. We have the figure inside in his plastic-less window view that we can see, but I do like how we're using a bit more of the black and the silver just to give it a bit more of a specific subline feel. Side of the box, so it's still similar to Studio Series, where we'll have the art and the numbering. Another shot of Bumblebee. I like how we're just doing this generic directional D-pad as the logo, as opposed to the consistent Autobot logo, which made no sense in certain figures. Top of the box. In terms of the back of the box, so we have a shot of Bumblebee in both his robot mode and his Cybertronian vehicle mode. In terms of the backdrop, so I guess it's a bit of a defend icon type moment, so very cool. So this is all still pretty much in the same context as what we've seen in previous Studio Series. And in terms of the blurb here, what do we have? We have Bumblebee teams up with the Autobots to protect Icon from the Decepticon assault. I will admit, I actually did quite enjoy this game, and it's probably one of the few games I would definitely resurrect the Xbox for. Anyway, that's for another time. We do have a shot of the backdrop there. So, very cool. Very Studio Series, definitely nothing completely brand new and foreign. It's just that this is focusing very much on the War for Cybertron line, which probably means we're going to get a whole heap of other characters down the track, which is good, because I did miss some of them from the original War for Cybertron figure release many moons ago. I'd bring some of them out of storage if I could, but I know they're very deep in storage. It's definitely on the maybe the next decade type thing. Anyway, time to open up the box, have a better look at Bumblebee, and take things from there. And with Bumblebee now out of the packaging, what do we have? So we have 3 accessories, a close combat weapon and 2, I suspect, ranged weapons, which I think is very cool. Definitely reminds me of the game. Bumblebee himself, the manual, and off screen right now is the backdrop. So if I just grab Bumblebee ever so quickly, just rotate his limbs around. Okay. So Bumblebee in front of his display backdrop. Now, obviously this is not doing it any form of justice, so hopefully if I get enough time I'll do a few shots of Bumblebee with the backdrop. I haven't decided how I'm posting them yet. Could just post them up in the air as I usually do most things, or if I'll do them as part of a community post remains to be seen. But anyway, pretty much just a quick look at Bumblebee in front of the backdrop. That's very cool. Okay, so before we look at the accessories and Bumblebee, manual. So I do like how we have a few number of panels dedicated to just going over the actual weapons. So some of those weapons can be stored on the back of Bumblebee, which is cool. And otherwise, it just goes through the mechanisms by which we can pretty much switch out the loadout. So I think that alone, very, very cool. First 6 steps on this side of the booklet, nothing too hefty. Now, I do actually own, if I remember correctly, the War for Cybertron Bumblebee that was released some time ago. So at some point in time, as I said, probably not anytime soon, it'd be nice to actually do a compare and contrast between the two, because I think a lot of people are also trying to do that as well. And then just going through the progressive build, the transformation. It doesn't look too bad. Hopefully there's some nice tabbing to help secure everything into his vehicle mode. And then we have a nice little step on how to attach and store certain things. And this is probably one of the few times where I'm going to be a case of, you know what, I don't care if there's weapons on Cybertron in the vehicle modes. Do it. So that was the manual. Very nice. In terms of the accessories, let's stand you there, Bumblebee, ever so quickly. Emphasis, try to stand you there. So the first accessory is his close combat little dagger of sorts. It is in the one color, which is unfortunate, but it does have some very cool detailing on it. So that is that. We have a blaster of some description. Now, it's been a while since I played the game, so I can't actually even remember what half these weapons are, on the assumption that they're true to the game. Now, with Cliff Jumper coming out, I do hope we get some different weapons and not necessarily repacks of these ones from Bumblebee. And then lastly, we get this weapon as well, if I can ever figure out the correct orientation. So we get those 3. Now, in terms of Bumblebee, storage apparently was just a case of just tabbing those onto the back. And surprisingly, they do tab very nicely into his back. And from the front, they actually don't seem overly visible, which is good. In terms of Bumblebee and a sword, pretty much just stick that into the hand like so. Very cool. Now, as for these weapons when they're not being detached, so I take them off. Apparently, I just need to where am I actually detaching his arm? I feel like it should be there. Hold on, because I don't want to use excessive force and then do really awkward things. Yes, it should be just at the bottom of the elbow. There you go. That is a very secure joint, so I don't think you will break it. You will need a little bit of force, but yes, it will come undone. And in fact, I think to help keep it inside, it's also a bit of a half circle peg shape. So that's the arm detached. And if we go for, let's go for weapon number 1. So there is weapon 1. Very cool. And then if we attach that and do, it would actually be nice if I knew which orientation was up and which one was down. So I'm just going to assume this one is up. And that will be weapon number 2. So that's very cool. I think it's actually nice that for the sake of the figures, they've just done it this way. I think it does remind me more of the game, because their weapons and limbs would just change and morph accordingly. Obviously can't do it with everything, but I think it's kind of cool that it's been done this way. Now we'll attach Bumblebee's arm. I get the feeling it is only one arm and not both arms, based on, especially with some of the colorization on the elbow joint there. I think it's just this arm that does the detaching. So that was a look at the accessories that are included. We'll see them once again when we hit Bumblebee's alt mode. So Bumblebee. Now, just to reconfirm, you will definitely pass the standing test. So Bumblebee from the front, the side, the back, the other side, and a bit of a close-up on Bumblebee's head and general torso details. In terms of colours, it's still very typical Bumblebee, so we're sporting a nice... it definitely feels like a bit more of a muted yellow, like maybe a muted golden yellow, but it does work very well. We do have bits of black, which I suspect have been painted, little bits of red, some silver, the darker grey, just to break up some of the yellow as well. So from a colour perspective, everything actually does work quite well. We do have some silver and blue as well on Bumblebee's head. So overall, visually, definitely very Bumblebee looking, and the colours do actually work quite well. Now, I will admit, when I looked at the image on the front of the manual, I was a little bit worried. And I think it's just more of a case of that particular image from an angle perspective is not doing it any favours. Whereas if I look at Bumblebee front on, to be honest, it doesn't seem that bad. Because I did notice it, there is a little bit of this kibble, but it's not too bad. It is trying to remain relatively neat and tidy to the main body as best as possible. And because it's relatively flat, you can hold Bumblebee like this, and it's actually not too much of an issue. So it is there, but it is doing fairly well at trying to be a bit more inconspicuous. Plus, as we saw earlier, it does provide some of those storage points for the weapons. So, in terms of articulation, Bumblebee will have a nice 360 at the head. He'll definitely have some tilt up and a little bit of tilt down. So from a dynamic posing perspective, his head will definitely work out quite well. In terms of the arm, you can get a bit of a full 360 there. Just bear in mind you do have bits of the alt mode paneling that could be in the way. So just maybe tilt the arm a little bit out of the body just to help that. And that's basically been done by a nice little ball socket in there. So the arm will go all the way out like that, which is good. In terms of the upper arm, there is a 360 rotation there. We know the elbow will also pretty much support a nice 90-degree forward and probably about a 45-degree backward. The backward bit does look a little bit weird, but it is what it is. In terms of the forearm, there's not much movement. It's a little bit of movement in the wrist, but I'd hardly call it movement per se. So from the arm perspective, it's probably your standard level of articulation. It's nothing overly super fancy, but there's definitely enough there that you can definitely get some dynamic posing happening. We do have a nice little side-to-side swivel at the torso area / waist. It's probably about a 45-degree either left and right, and this is good because posing wise it means that you can actually shift the torso around to help give yourself a bit of that sense of direction. In terms of the splits, yes, full splits, very nice. Obviously the dangers of doing the full splits is legs may pop off. we will have a full 360 spin up here at the very upper thigh and the hip joint. As we know, legs will go all the way out, all the way to the front, all the way to the back, so that is very cool. So there's a lot of movement up here just in the upper legs alone. The knee band is quite adequate as well, so it's not just your standard knee band, there's a little bit of knee band going backwards a bit more. Not much of a forward knee bend, just because of some of this armoring that will get in the way. I guess you do get a little bit of side to side with the feet, but don't count on it being too much. So legs definitely have enough to help support some dynamic poses, which is very good. And I think with some of the movement as well, yeah, you can definitely have some things going on. In fact, what have I done with Bumblebee? Just pretty much done him into this little interesting quick little pose. So that's pretty much a rundown of the articulation of the Bumblebee figure. It's definitely in the realms of standard. There's nothing super exceptional screaming out I am articulated to the extreme. I think there's definitely enough there to do things with, which is good. So yeah, definitely looking forward to getting a chance to pose Bumblebee after this video has been recorded for shorts and things like that. So with that now out of the way, time to give Bumblebee a transform. See what his alt mode is like, see what his alt mode is like with his weapons attached, and then have a few final thoughts. Okay, and in the interest of time, because that actually took a lot longer than I was expecting, and I'm still not happy with the result. The figure has the potential to actually have a nice transformation and solid alt mode. But for the life of me, the legs just did not want to behave well. So things haven't tabbed altogether very well, so I'm going to make that giant disclaimer right now. No need to mention that it's been mistransformed. I already know. But yes, interest of time, I don't have all the time in the world to transform this perfectly. And in fact, for future reference, I'm probably going to do a whole, if I can't transform it within 10-15 minutes tops, leave it as is, move on with life. Because that in itself could actually be considered as a bit of a issue with the figure. Anyway, for the most part, Bumblebee is pretty much there. I have attached all the accessories, including the one that's underneath. And to be honest, the underneath probably looks the most cleanest. It's the top that actually looks absolutely terrible. Yes, you can see where all the tabbing is supposed to actually tab together. Yes, I have a feeling I just need to literally put him back to his robot mode. Try again. But anyway, that's what Bumblebee looks like equipped with all the weapons and everything on. So from the front, from the side, as I said, ignore the blatantly untabbed panels. From the back, from the other side, from the top, which actually doesn't look too bad, and the bottom, which does look fairly neat and tidy. And yes, in the process of doing this part, I'm probably just going to untab everything, and before I know it, I'm going to throw Bumblebee across the room. I actually do like how the weapons can attach. I mean, one, it's good storage, and two, especially for War for Cybertron and things like that, I think it actually works out well. The weapon doesn't have to look completely fancy or anything, but it just actually doesn't look too bad being on the top of the Cybertronian alt mode. In terms of just taking those off, just to put it back to a more normal looking alt mode. Now the alt mode actually conceptually isn't too bad. I think it does look quite nice and will look infinitely better once everything tabs together. Which, I mean, I can probably get one side to tab, but it won't tab on both sides. I mean, that's the best I can get this side to tab, but anyway. So you still have a lot of that yellow coming through for Bumblebee. There's a lot more black now coming through, which is very nice. And we do get a bit of red as well. Now, I will say it now. I have a feeling. So this panel here is part of the shoulder, just like this panel here is part of the shoulder. Now that's clearly been painted black on the base yellow, but just looking at this part here, I have a weird feeling, probably with all my frustrations of transforming Bumblebee, that black paint is eventually going to wear off purely just from wear and tear. So that's a bit of an interesting thing. It's unfortunate. I can see why it's obviously black to go with the alt mode, but because it's black on a pre-colored plastic, that may not last very long. The other blacks will probably be okay, just not those ones on the shoulder panel. The wheels do look very nice. In terms of articulation, the wheels are pretty much the only thing that are going to move. And surprisingly, despite being mistransformed, it's very smooth. I also do like how we do have that nice Autobot logo there as well on the front. So overall, I do actually like Cybertron in alt modes. And at some point in time, if I can correctly transform Bumblebee, it would be nice to actually have this Bumblebee against the B127 Bumblebee, just to see how similar and dissimilar the two look against each other. But overall, the alt mode definitely does look very nice. I do like how it's got that more curved, sleek look about it, and still has a very faint homage to, you know, Bumblebee being a Volkswagen. Obviously later down the track, not on Cybertron. The colours are still very nice and all that, and I do like some of this extra red detailing that's been applied as well. So my only grievance really just part of the transformation, which is probably all on me. I don't think it's necessarily part of the figure that is poorly designed. I think it's just a case of me needing a bit more time to just properly work through the transformation process. So that's that. Bringing the manual back. So, final thoughts for Studio Series Deluxe Class Bumblebee Gamer Edition 1. Robot mode. Visually, very nice. Articulation is pretty much your stock standard articulation for a Deluxe Class figure. The included accessories, very, very good for the robot mode. And yeah, overall, robot mode actually isn't too bad. The articulation could be a little bit better, but it's a Deluxe class. There's only so much you can do. The kibble, it'd be nice if it wasn't as noticeable, but on the flip side, it does blend in quite nicely with the back and the body, so it's definitely the more forgiving type, to say the least. Up until doing some dynamic poses and shorts, I won't know in full how the range of posing and articulation is, but from what I've seen here, I think it's overall pretty good. So from a robot mode perspective, definitely not too bad at all. Transformation, it starts okay, and then becomes really clunky with the legs. Now, I have a feeling that's also in due to the manuals actually not being the best in terms of illustrating the transformation process. It's not the first time that I've looked at a manual and I don't want to say struggle, but I guess there's no real way of darting about it. There have been some steps that I've looked at and go, I actually cannot understand what you're trying to articulate here in a visual image. Which is understandable. And I think a few people actually have had a similar grievance with the Hasbro-based manuals versus the Takara Tomy ones. So transformation, basically legs onwards, that's where it starts getting clunky, and I think that's obviously led me to this situation where I have not been able to correctly tab the legs and the top of the vehicle mode together properly. Now, general caveat is probably is just me. It's not necessarily a failing of the figure. So hopefully I'll get a bit of time, try the process again myself, and see if I can tidy that up. Alt mode wise, I like how the accessories can attach in various places. That's very nice, and actually still remains relatively in theme. Colors look good, detailing looks nice, general aesthetic looks very nice as well. So from an alt mode, especially if I can get it to tab properly, I think will look very, very, very cool. I think my only grievance is obviously some of the post-painted black on the front of the shoulders. Obviously, if there's going to be wear and tear, that'll start showing up in the alt mode as well, unfortunately. So that was just quick thoughts on the robot mode, alt mode, and the transformation process. Would I recommend this iteration of War for Cybertron Bumblebee? I am still going to say yes. His robot mode is still quite pleasant, so if you don't want to transform him too much, his robot mode is quite acceptable. I will comment later down the track as to whether I had any success with the transformation and his alt mode, because I think his alt mode is equally as impressive if it can be, you know, neatly tabbed together. Like, I actually appreciate both modes. I just wish it didn't look separated on certain panels. I would definitely say anyone who's been a huge fan of the War for Cybertron games, I'd be very surprised if you skip any of the figures, given this is our second chance at getting some of them. So I'd definitely say if you're a fan of Bumblebee, you enjoyed War for Cybertron, you're a big fan of the Autobots, the usual deal, he would be a good addition to the collection. And hopefully you won't have any weird struggle bus adventures like I have. So yes, definitely going to give that another shot. I'm not too thrilled with some of that. But as I said, time is starting to run away from me, so I do need to try and just wrap it up with what I have. So yes, overall, he's definitely been an enjoyable figure. My feel on his negatives, they're definitely not sufficient enough to skip the figure. It's just a bit of time, patience, just to try and work things through and actually see if it is a case of just not doing things properly, which is probably the case, or if there is a weird realization that the figure's not as robust in certain areas, but hopefully that is not the case. I'll leave the unboxing and review video there for Bumblebee. I think I've covered enough for the time being. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review video. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, link in the description below. And if you're still watching at this point in time, and in fact you probably may have already seen it already, there will be a supplementary short of Bumblebee floating around as well. Stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video, whether it's a continuation of this War for Cybertron Studio series, other Transformer content, or something else on the channel. See ya.